Okay, we'll begin because it's 5 past the hour. Thanks everybody for joining us. And if you're watching this later on, we're here to do a very different webinar, which is going to be about joining our 4th cohort. So to begin with everything, Beth and I will be speaking at first. Gary will say some things as well. And if you have particular questions for Gary or Beth or me, please use the Q&A. That'll help us keep track of everything. And I will read the questions aloud when that happens. So let's get started. How to share screen real quick. PowerPoint, perfect. And start session. So this is basically this. These are email addresses, Beth and mine, if you want to email us after the fact. So we're going to go over just some quick stuff in case you are not familiar with what sea change is and what's the differences between the many sea changes. So firstly, C is an acronym. It's STEM with 2 M's. The second M they added for medicine. And that's becoming a little more standard now. And it's equity achievement. So it's an acronym within an acronym. So the AAAS sea change stuff is focused mostly on the institution. They do have a biomedical program that does all sorts of things with what are considered the biomedical sciences. Ours is a little different. It's going to be focused on departments and disciplines within physics and astronomy. The reason there are different ones is there's the institutional things that I'm sure you all are aware that there's stuff that are really other people's jurisdiction, whereas there's a lot of cool things that are happening at the department that are equally important. And AAAS realized that for true systemic change to happen, it needs to be happening at both directions, from the top down and bottom up. And that's why we exist. So Beth, you want to go over this and what it means to get a sea change award?
Yeah, thanks, Alexis. And for those that don't know, Alexis is the director of the Sea Change program, and I chair the committee that oversees the process. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Basically, the process starts with a department joining a cohort and working through a self-assessment. And that self-assessment really includes a lot of different things. Policies around diversity, equity, and inclusion, hiring practices, how you recruit students, both undergraduate and graduate. And of course, if you don't have graduate programs, you don't have to worry about that part. But if you've got both, you really need to think about that. Career transitions, like once somebody gets into the program, how do they advance and graduate if they're a student, or if they're a faculty member, how do they progress from after hiring from assistant professor to associate professor to full professor. So looking at those real key transition periods and staff also. And once a department works through the self-assessment and brings in a lot of information and data and reviews that critically and discovers where they feel there should be change, the department then creates an application and they write a narrative around the information that they gained from the self-assessment. It describes what they've learned, what issues are or are not being addressed in the department, and really a plan. They put together a plan to address these issues, a 5-year plan. And the plan has to be specific, measurable, achievable, time limited, or what we call a SMART plan. The narrative and the plan then go through a peer review process, and it's reviewed by members of the community that are also faculty members or specialists in equity, diversity, and inclusion. They give feedback to the department. And if successful, the department receives a bronze award, which is good for 5 years. Institutions basically, this is about continuous improvement, a continuous improvement. And then after 5 years, the department will need to reapply for a bronze award or advance to the next level, which would be a silver award. But it's not just about an award and sitting back. It's really, this enables the department, this really moves the department along on their on the process for creating a more inclusive environment where everybody succeeds.
Yes, and I want to just clarify two things. We actually have had reviewers who are not faculty. They are very qualified though. We've had some we've had terrific reviewers. We can't tell you who yet, but
EDI, I called them, but
yeah, they're great people and very qualified. I was very pleased with those. And yeah, one of the things I want to emphasize with the award is that departments need to actually do their action plan. It just can't sit around and look cool. So just to really recap too, in case you're not familiar with AAAS sea change or the finer details with physics and astronomy sea change, we work in partnership with AAAS is how I think about it. There's some differences on our focus. Ours is physics and astronomy departments in the US and US territories. AAAS sea change is focused on institutions in the same locations. The institutions with AAAS pay a membership fee. It's sliding scale. Those details are above my pay grade, but I will be happy to forward those information to you if you would like. We don't have a membership component, so the folks who are working in the cohorts are doing this for free. We don't currently have any plans to have a membership or fee attached to our awards. Consequentially, we have more modest program efforts. AAAS Sea Change offers quite a bit of things. They have these courses, they have a board of sorts that people post on, all sorts of different things. We basically have the program and these webinars that I host, try to host it at least monthly. The AAAS Sea Change program is designed by folks who work at AAAS. Ours is designed by a lot of volunteers from physics and astronomy departments. Those folks are listed on our website. And we exited the pilot stage. So this was an old slide. I forgot to add that. And we are now officially into what we consider to be a full program, though that program is still evolving because, as Beth alluded to, there will be a silver and gold award, and we have not developed the silver or gold award yet. And some of the specifics around RC change, because this is what we're here to talk about. Beth, you can go for this one.
The Physics and Astronomy Sea Change project is really a discipline. It is a discipline project, but it is a multi-professional society collaboration. And you can see all of the societies that have collaborated with us on developing the program. And I think that's a real key thing. The physics and astronomy community recognizes there's a lot of work to do to improve the culture across. It doesn't matter if it's an institution of higher education, but anywhere. But this particular program really concentrates on institutions of higher education. But it really does require a community to work on this project. And as Alexis said, we offer webinars on promising EDI practices that are free and open to the public, and we are really pleased that you're here to join us today. But there's also a set of webinars that have been happening. They're recorded and placed, and if you want to know where, it's Alexis can point you to the right place. We started off with cohort 1 in May of 2021, and cohort 2 started in 2022, and cohort 3 started earlier this year. Cohort 1 is complete. Cohort 2 is sunsetting, and there are now 10 total departments, a total of 10 that are engaged in the pilot that were engaged. 4 will have submitted their application by the end of May. I guess that's the end of the pilot. It's really, we're kind of in this transitional period between pilot and full. We're actually fully launched now. And we're very excited that in fall of 2023, Smith College Physics Department received the very first bronze Physics and Astronomy Sea Change Award. This was also the very first disciplinary award. And we're glad that it was Physics and Astronomy. Like I said, we've got a lot of work to do, and we're starting off the gates being the first ones to offer a disciplinary award. And I do believe that the other disciplines, for example, math, geosciences, there's interest in biology. We'll see what happens, but we're happy that our colleagues in other disciplines are interested, and we hope will have their own sea change program.
Yes, thanks. And so people have wondered where our departments are. We do a lot of confidentiality things. So basically this is a map of where our departments have been either for the pilot or the current cohort. We've had a fair concentration in California and in Massachusetts, but we've had a lot of other states as well. I think we've had our cohort 3 has 18 departments, so plus including some that went to cohort 3. So I think we've had roughly 20 departments. So we have a lot of states we haven't been in yet, a lot of institutions we haven't covered, but we're doing a very sizable job. And the departments have included large R1s, some small liberal arts schools, regional institutions, and a lot of other things, private and public, things like that. And as you can see with the map, all sorts of different states, some states where things are going a little better with DEI, some states where things aren't going so great.
I'd just
And
like to, can I just say that I think it was important for us at the very beginning in designing this, that it really would work for any department, because we knew the range, the variety of physics departments. And we didn't want it just for example, big R1s or small liberal arts. We wanted any of the departments to be able to go through the process and consider cultural change in their department. And also, like Alexis said, we've designed this program so that even if you're in a state with challenging laws, that we want to work with you to work through those and be successful.
yeah, so to add on to that, as the legal landscape is continuing to change every day, it feels like we are attentive to that and working with folks. And we have several committees that are working on all sorts of things with us. You may not see this work, but they're doing the really important things that are making the program happen. We have an applications and awards subcommittee where they help decide who's in the cohort, and among other things, how the applications are evaluated and things like that. The implementation subcommittee has a great plan that we'll be testing out very soon to see, how we can best support departments who are awarded. So at this point, it'll be Smith, but hopefully there will be some more that are joining Smith in the near future. And our sustainability subcommittee, and that's thinking very largely about different things regarding sustainability. A lot of times we think about as finance, but volunteer labor, that of departments and so on. And so we keep talking. Yeah.
But can I just say that a couple things about, well, one thing about sustainability, the Physics and Astronomy Sea Change Project is a lot of volunteer work, whether they're staff from professional societies or faculty or whatever. We have been relying on their work, and I think it will, as Alexis said, will continue that way. But how do we sustain the project even beyond the money that we have right now, the grant money?
Yeah, so we're continuing to seek out for funding for things and thinking forward on a lot of different facets of sustainability.
Yeah.
So in terms of joining a cohort, what does that mean? So if your department ends up being part of the 4th cohort, you will be working through a disciplinary self-assessment. This is a very comprehensive document. Gary can probably tell you more about this because he has lived experience, which neither Beth and I have. And this will go through the entire department of different populations that exist in your department. As Beth had pointed out, if you don't have graduate students in your department or postdocs, those are sections you don't do. But if you do, you're expected to do all the sections. You create a 5-year action plan to address some of the challenges or issues you found or enhance some of the current activities. Part of the challenge of this work is we suspect that you will find more things than you can actually address. And to make wise decisions, what's in your capabilities during a 5-year plan. We also offer optional meetups for the departments. We had one yesterday for cohort 3. They receive advice, they give advice to each other, they support each other, and that's really a nice thing that I think they're working through. It's all sorts of different things. The people who are part of the cohort, they opt to show up to these meetups and they share out whatever they want. I also meet with the departments regularly as much as they like. And sometimes the various individuals who are involved with Physics and Astronomy Sea Change Committee also have a lot of really great experiences and they're willing to share things. Example, Rachel Ivy who's now at AAPT, she was at AIP for a period, has great advice on how to do data collection things. And the last thing that we are asking for departments who are a part of cohort 4 is that you would be expected to apply for a bronze award by May 26th. This is probably the end of May 2026. Your application will receive a very comprehensive set of reviews from reviewers, things like that. And Beth, you want to say about what they get for the awards?
Oh, yeah. So there are various ways that the department will be celebrated for receiving an award. One thing is that we do try and celebrate at a professional society meeting. So I assume that will continue. Gary can tell you get a really awesome award. It actually is a beautiful award. But there are other ways that you can really leverage getting an award. For example, we're working with funding agencies to see how awards can be highlighted in a broader impact statement for NSF or a DOE peer plan. You can highlight it on your web page, which could be very attractive to bring in faculty and students to your program. I'm sure your dean and provost would love to highlight the wonderful work that's happening as it supports the broader goals of the university. And those are the sort of things that we can think of celebrating, but also recognizing the department for their efforts in getting a bronze award. So Alexis, yeah, okay.
And so Beth went over some of the recognition things. We're also open to other ideas for things that people can do. Gary probably can tell us a little bit more in a minute or so about what they've done. So one of the things people ask is, why would you want to participate in Physics and Astronomy Sea Change or this cohort structure? The program, as I've told folks, that you probably could do this on your own in some ways, but also the likelihood, I think, may not happen. So I like to be honest with folks, and we provide a really good structure so far to really explore and better understand your department. The self-assessment has a lot of great questions that people have like, gee, I wish I would have thought of these things. And it's also became an excuse for folks to talk to other offices around their institution. People like to have reasons to go talk to people versus, hey, let's just show up and what are you up to? People like the cohort meetings because they remind people to do the work of things. So that's really important because again, it's really easy to not do the things. You have good intentions, you know how to do things, but we all need like reminders and sort of accountability structures to help things. There's a lot of really good opportunities to receive feedback from all sorts of people. The cohorts departments are not in competition for the award. Everybody can get an award or none of you can get an award if you apply. So that's the important thing that I think makes us different, that it doesn't, like, we hope everybody succeeds, and we're trying to create that supportive structure for folks. The review panels, again, provide a lot of feedback. It takes some considerable amount of time to do this. They have lots of different insights and different perspectives. We curate our review panels so that you get really good feedback. And we'll continue to check in once you're awarded to make sure that, again, it's easy to, life happens, basically, is some of it. So just to check in and make things happen. And also, there's ways we can support. Sometimes having external folks come in and talk to different people makes a difference, even though I know that a lot of folks have great ideas and know the right things. Sometimes an external voice really pushes things forward for better or worse. And then Beth, you can go over this part.
Yes, this is, I mean, a great question is, can DEI work like sea change persist in the current political climate in the US? And again, I'll emphasize, yes, we can continue with programs like sea change. We need to just be a little bit more strategic in what we do. This program is all about cultural change. It's about having everybody in the department, whether a student, a faculty member, or staff, succeed. So casting it that way is a really good way to think about it. It's improving introductory courses by active learning. It's improving mentoring strategies. It's culturally responsive pedagogy, faculty and student experiences with inclusion. It's really looking at the way that we promote tenure and advance faculty. It's about the quality of teaching and mentoring that happens our department. So cast that way, yes, absolutely. This is important to make sure that, well, to support departments and making sure that everybody succeeds. So we do consult with institutional legal counsel. We do, or not we, but we emphasize that it's good for you to do that, especially if you're in a state that has put some restrictions on activities in DEI. But that's a really important part of what you do. We understand that the climate changes, it's changing quickly, and what might work today might not work tomorrow. And so that's why we think it's really important for you to stay in touch with the administration and legal counsel to make sure that what comes out of or what goes into the SMART plan is something that you can act on. Alexis, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think we can just say safely that, again, I know which departments are in, they're in all sorts of different contexts, and they're persisting, and we're willing to work with folks as long as they're willing to work with us. That said, as much as we want people to apply for the award, if things become too challenging and you feel that it's not the right fit, we are also understanding about that and would not hold it against you.
And our colleagues that are on the Sea Change committee have also other DEI projects they're working with departments on, and they're learning how to navigate this space too. So we're really working with each other, supporting each other, and sharing what we've learned about supporting physics departments in this climate.
Cool. Yep. And on better notes, if you are interested in joining our 4th cohort, this is for post-secondary physics and astronomy departments in the US or the US territories. There's some similar programs. Again, if you want to email us afterwards, in the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Any case for ours, there's our bit.ly. I'm also will be sending this out to the folks who registered for a short application, and we expect them to be due by the 1st of August at 5 p.m. Eastern. And we'll let folks know our decision by the end of August, we're hoping. So, and hoping that departments for cohort 4 will start in fall 2024. We will have this webinar after I'm done speaking about this stuff. We are welcoming questions and emails afterwards. Also, I will be at a whole bunch of meetings this summer. I will be at I don't know when exactly, but I will be at the AAAS, which is Astronomy Summer Meeting. In June, I will be at the AAPT Summer Meeting, which is in July, at the beginning of July, and towards the end of July, I will be at the AAPM National Meeting, which is for the physicists in medicine, at the end of July. So if you want to meet up with me in person, I will be around those meetings. I think that's my travel. And as always, we thank everybody for the different parts they do with this program. We thank the PAC Change Committee. They do a lot of things for us, help design the program, and so on and so on and so on. We always are thankful for AAAS Change, especially Shirley Malcolm and Beth Rudy, who are doing some wonderful things for us, giving us advice. We learn from them. We thank the AIP Venture Partnership Fund, which funded our pilot, and the NSF, who's our current funding, and the departments who have piloted with us, and anyone who's just really been supportive of our efforts. So that's included our reviewers who do a lot of great work and things like that. And people who show up to these events, because that helps me justify doing these events. If nobody shows up, it's hard to justify things. And if you're interested in our monthly updates where I advertise other things around PAC change and let you know what we've been doing, feel free to sign up. That will also go out in an email. With that said, our floor is open for questions. And if we don't have any in the Q&A, I was gonna say with Gary, so would you be able to share a little bit about what your experience has been with the process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll begin by reiterating some of what Alexis and Beth were saying, which is for me and for my department, one of the most helpful things about Sea Change itself, this is work we were already involved in. We already wanted to do a self-assessment and we're in the process of making an action plan. But this enabled us to meet regularly with a cohort of other departments that were working on the same thing. And we talked about everything from legal issues of how to survey small populations and preserve confidentiality to logistical issues about, what to include in a self-assessment and best ways to gather information and what kinds of ideas people had for action items for particular issues. So that was a really helpful part of the process. The other thing I would say before just going back to take whatever questions people have is I think I'll say two absolutely vital parts of the process are institutional buy-in and departmental buy-in. We could not have done what we did. We had a subcommittee. There was a smaller part of the department that was doing the regular work, but we were also routinely reporting back to the department as a whole, getting feedback, getting input. And our department 100% prioritizes and supports this work, and that was crucial. And the institution really values this work, Smith College. And so we were first off able to gather information with the help of institutional support research, with the help of the administration. That was crucial for our self-assessment and in formulating our action plans. We were getting specific requests from the administration saying, okay, tell us, what do you want from us? Now, that's not a guarantee. What we most want to implement our ideas would be staffing, and we're not going to get that. But they really are open to helping us figure out how to do these things. And I can't imagine making significant progress on our plan without that.
Great, thanks. And we do have a question about, are the regular webinars associated with the program? They are basically open again to the whole public. So anybody who can register and is willing to follow the AAPT code of conduct can sign up for them. We get all sorts of folks. I really appreciate when people are indeed members of any of the professional societies involved. The best way usually to find out about it is through the monthly signups that I do. Each of the professional societies has some reps who are asked to help advertise these things. I'm not great sometimes with following all the emails with all the different societies, so I don't know to what extent that happens. I know AAAS does include that in their they have an education newsletter that I occasionally do find myself reading. So I know that Tom does advertise them there. I know AAPT advertises them. As for some of the topics, I really just like alliteration partially, and there's been a sort of a movement towards using promising practices versus best practices. So they've covered a lot of things. They've covered big things, like just restructuring all sorts of programmatic things you do in your department to things you do in your classrooms, graduate student things, undergrad things, ways to think about how to study your department. Last time, let's see, our last one was with Marty Baylor on this practicing professionalism framework she developed, and it was really cool because she has positioned professionalism in a very different way than I typically see it, and just like what do professional societies care about in terms of like DEI things and social political things and all these other things. Before that, we had a webinar with some folks from RIT who were about, it was about how to pick your research group if you're a graduate student. And I think that's a really important topic and probably applies to other folks. And I think, and right before that, we had some things about planning for access for people with disabilities or unmet access needs, and that could apply to lots of things from the class. They were mostly focused on the classroom, but I can imagine that applies to research labs, your faculty meetings, basically anywhere people are. And those are all on YouTube right now. So anybody who has access to YouTube can go watch them. So while we wait for some more questions, Gary, what do you wish you would have known when you entered this process?
So I guess one of the things that took us a little while to figure out, well, two things I'd say actually. One is kind of getting how to get the work done effectively. And actually both things I'm going to say are related to that. So one part of it is just as a matter of process, that combination I was mentioning before of having departmental buy-in, but having a small subcommittee. I mean, we're a pretty small department to begin with. But you know, it's hard to move important tasks forward in a group of 6 or 7 people, even when you have a group of 2, 3, 4 people. 2 is kind of pushing it on the low side. 3 or 4, I'd say, is probably the sweet spot, somewhere around there. That and then having one person whose job is not to do all the work, but whose job is to keep track of all the work. And that's true, of course, for any committee work. But I think DEI work often gets handled in a more kind of loosey, touchy-feely way than some other work. And so it's important to recognize that those same principles apply, that there has to be a person whose job includes checking in every couple weeks and figuring out, here's what we said we were going to do next. Have you done this? And so on. And, you know, who needs to take over this? The other thing related to that is trying to strike the balance of getting input from everyone without overly burdening the more vulnerable members of our population. So there's a, that applies to junior faculty. We were very clear we didn't want any junior faculty on the committee because it's a heavy lift, and we don't want to put time commitments on them. And at the same time, the input of junior faculty is absolutely vital to the process. So that's something we kind of felt our way through, and I think we ended in a really good place with it, but just being intentional right from the start. What mechanisms do you have in place to get input from your junior faculty, from your visiting faculty, your postdocs, from your students, from all these groups that on the one hand, you want to be part of the process, and on the other hand, you don't want to burden with a big time commitment. And so just setting up regular mechanisms for getting that feedback, and then us doing the work of figuring out how to incorporate that into our self-assessment and action plan, and then coming back and saying, okay, you know, have we captured what your input is? Does this meet what you're looking for? So that needs to be a regular part of the cycle.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think a lot of this has been trying to get the work done, and that's one of the hardest things to do sometimes than the actual work itself, just finding the time and carving it out. Was there anything that you found surprising about the process that you felt was a really good thing that you learned? Or
Um, so, um, I don't know if I would call any of this surprising. There were many things that we kind of thought but didn't know. And as we were doing our self-assessment, we were really able to dive down and back up what had been kind of anecdotal or intuitive with real data, which again, I think mostly tracked what we thought we knew. And so I'll go ahead and say one of our first findings was that we have a very high level of satisfaction with the climate in the department. Most students, broken down by every group we could identify, said that they do feel the professors really care about them and that it's a welcoming place. That having been said, there is a significant minority of students who don't feel that way, and they are disproportionately the students who are from groups that are underrepresented in physics. And one thing which I guess is not surprising, but I'm not sure I would have been confident of this going in. And this was again from a survey we did, and I can say more about how we did that because surveying was a huge challenge. But pretty much universally, students who did experience an unwelcoming climate in our classes in particular said it was not over issues of race or identity. It was over issues of academic preparation. Some students felt that our classes were made welcoming to students from academically strong high schools. And that in particular, our intro classes were not designed to be welcoming to students from other backgrounds. And of course, that correlates tremendously with race and class and first generation and these other categories. But that really guided our thinking. There are many things we're doing to, talk about physics and race and the history of physics and colonization and decolonization and bring in a more diverse seminar series and so on. So we still do those things, but this really told us, okay, a lot of our focus and time has to be around these issues of students from different academic backgrounds. And how do we make not just academic support systems, because we've always had that, we have lots of tutoring and support services available. But how do you do that in a way that doesn't become overly burdensome on those students who are already overwhelmed? And B, how do you do that in a way that creates a welcoming environment? If the message you send is, these students are in great shape, but you need remediation, then it doesn't matter what you're providing. You've put people on their back feet from the beginning. You have to create an environment which says everyone here can succeed. And here are the many pathways to lead you there. So we've been working on designing those support systems. We've also been working on our messaging around those support systems.
great. And so what other things have you been working on with your action plan so far? I know it's not even been a year, but
yeah, no, we've been doing some exciting work. So the biggest thing that we have implemented so far is a change to our curriculum, and this is directly related to what we were saying, which is we only had a calculus-based physics course. So we have created an algebra-based physics course with a focus on life science applications. A lot of students who take physics at Smith are pre-med. That's the reason they take physics. And most of what's in our sort of traditional physics course just isn't that interesting to many of them. And so we, starting this coming fall, are going to have a course called Living Physics, And the name is based on a textbook of that name, designed for courses of this type. And we're piloting that in the fall. So I'm very excited about that. And one of our key design goals for this course is we wanted it to still be a possible pathway to the major. So we wanted to figure out how can you have students taking this algebra-based living physics course and our calculus-based course that the physicists and engineers traditionally take and merge them afterwards. And so the living physics course comes with a supplement that you can optionally take to work on more mathematical problem solving if you are considering taking higher level physics courses. And I have been very pleasantly surprised. I was actually quite nervous that literally nobody would sign up for that supplement in the fall. And we have quite a few signed up for it. So we'll see how it goes. That's a pilot for the fall. And I can tell you a work in progress, which is one of my big priorities for next year. That's part of our action plan, is to design an information packet for all new physics students. And our thinking behind that is that right now, a lot of opportunities are found by word of mouth. Students, that ranges from research with us. We have a form on our website, just fill this out, and we talk about that. But a lot of students just come to us and, a student will come to my office and say, hey, I've heard about your research. Can I talk to you about it? And then, mid-spring, the students, particularly the first generation students who have no idea about these timelines, show up and say, can I work with you this summer? No, I'm sorry, I'm full for the summer. So we're trying to figure out ways to make that a less biased process, because the informal processes are often very biased by their nature. And so we want to have an information packet that says, how do you get involved in research with Smith professors? How do you find REUs? How do you find internships? And we ran this idea by our students, and one of their big pieces of advice was, don't make it a document. Because too much information, nobody will read it. Put it online with links so that when you're ready to look for an internship, you go look there. But the flip side of that is that people won't know to look. So I want there to be right up front just a timeline. If you're interested in summer work, here's when you should go look at that research and internship page. If you're interested in doing honors, here's when you should go look at that section on how to find out about doing honors in our department, and so on. And then another section of the document, and this again, we had been thinking about and then very strongly heard from students that this should be there, is where to go with problems. If you feel that a professor or a fellow student is being disrespectful or discriminatory towards you, or whatever it might be, where can you go with that, and what are your options? So that'll be another section. So again, my biggest goal for our DEI committee for next year is to create a first draft of that packet.
That sounds really like a good idea. I find there's so much information that I think folks take for granted after you've been around for enough time, that I've even found that for myself. So what has the student involvement and reaction been to y'all getting an award?
Yeah, it's been great. So as you know, you were there. We had a bunch of students show up at the AAAS meeting. The AAPT meeting where we got our award given to us. And, it was just this wonderful thing. Joyce and I went up on stage and look out, and there's this row of like 6 or 7 Smith students sitting in the audience. So that was very sweet. They've been very enthusiastic and supportive, and not shy about telling us, and that's something I love about Smith students. They don't tend to be shy about this kind of thing. So, here are things you need to work on. And so, for example, that thing about, when there are problems, where do we go? We don't know. make sure we know, things like that. So we had talked about trying to organize some kind of listening session, and we were thinking about the best way to do that. And again, confidentiality is a really tricky issue with a small number of majors. And before we even approached them about it, we had 2 students from our physics and astronomy club come to us and say, we want to hold a listening session about DEI issues in physics and astronomy. And we said, great. And they organized it. They set the date. They advertised it. We just told them, you know, we'll give you money for food. We will give you a space to do it in. And you write up the results, make sure you anonymize any information, and then give us a summary. And they did. And we, I and one other professor had a meeting with 3 or 4 students where they reported out, and we asked them a bunch of clarifying questions and so on. And after an hour, we decided we need to keep talking more about this. There's more here than we've had time to get to. We scheduled a second one and went through that again. And then at our last department meeting, I did a report out where I summarized their summary, and then I'm also posting it for our department. That having been said, one of our goals was to put 2 students each year on the DEI committee. And they really like that idea. The students in general really want some other student to do that. And with repeated calls, we've thus far gotten 0 volunteers. Now, that may be because we started those calls mid-spring, and students are insane starting mid-spring. So it may be that if we put out another call in early fall, we'll get some volunteers, but so far nothing.
I think it's worth exploring. I think it's a good thing to offer in different times. I was gonna ask, so this is the final few questions because I know you and Beth both have to leave. If anyone else has questions, feel free to ask them, drop them in the Q&A. You mentioned physics and astronomy students. What have you talked much with the astronomy department at Smith, because they are separate? They're very
They
unique.
are. We talk a lot. We're in the same building. We have very close relationships, and we have a lot of double majors. So the reason I said physics and astronomy is because although the departments are separate and our DEI plan was completely a physics plan created by the physics department for the physics department, the student club is the physics and astronomy club. So when they decided they wanted to organize a listening session, they decided they wanted to organize a physics and astronomy listening session. But what they did, and again, this was entirely on their initiative, was took the results and split them out and brought everything that was either general or specific to physics to us, and then had a separate meeting with astronomy faculty to tell them all the listening session results that were general or specific to astronomy. But I have also had conversations with the astronomy faculty because they are in the process of creating their racial justice action plan right now. And so we've talked a lot about, you know, how our process went, and I actually showed them our action plan. So yeah, there's a lot of collaboration, but it is 2 separate departments.
Cool, great. And because we're at top of the hour, I think it's Beth, do you have any questions you want to ask?
Go ahead and ask yours.
I was gonna say my final question is, because I always like these kinds of things. What's your elevator pitch for other departments to join this program? I assume that you're supportive of the program, of course, if you're
Yeah,
not.
I definitely am. And so I guess there's 2 aspects to that. One is why you should make a racial justice action plan. And I could make an elevator pitch for that, but I'm gonna skip that on the assumption that anyone in this room or listening to this webinar later is probably already sold on the value of that. So the added value of joining the Sea Change project really comes down to the things that you said. First off, the cohort. As I mentioned earlier, just being able to talk regularly to other departments who were going through the same process was a great source of ideas and feedback and mutual support. And then two, as you mentioned, having gotten the award, it doesn't come with any money or direct benefits, but it comes with a certain level of positive reinforcement for the work we're doing, and that can be useful. And as I mentioned, the administration at Smith was really clear when we got this award. We want to support this work. And the fact that it was happening in this very publicly visible way, I think, made that all the more true. And so I'll just throw out one example is we said we want an AIP site visit, which costs, I forget, like $5,000 or $10,000. And they said, okay, we'll pay for an AIP site visit. I will say the bad news is AIP is literally backlogged for years. We've been trying for 2 years to get an AIP site visit and have no prospect of that happening in the foreseeable future. But the administration was on board and was happy to pay for that. And more generally, it helps to have some external validation that you are doing this work and making meaningful change.
Great, well, thanks, and we will follow up with the site visit thing. I'm wondering if there's other programs that might not be as directly related, but would still get you similar feedback and when it would be around the same cost. So I'll follow up with that.
Okay, that would be great.
I was thinking the same thing. And I'll just add very quickly that when we informed the department, we also informed the president of Smith College, and the president responded with excitement to our announcement about the award. So I do feel, Gary, that you're right, that your administration is very excited about this, as we are. And I think that's really great. That's another thing about bringing an award like this. I think that, it shows, like you say, that your department is committed to doing this really honest and hard work. Cultural change is not easy, but I think having that external validation of what a department does is really important.
And the little glass award thing really is pretty.
Yeah.
Kudos.
For awarded departments, they receive a little statue of sorts. It's made out of glass. It's pretty heavy, actually. It's nice. And in case, thank you so much, everybody, for your time. And we will be sending this recording out. Beth and Gary have to go, but I will stay on for a few minutes longer if you want to ask questions.
All right, thank you so much.
Great. It's great seeing everybody.